Sam Blake had been living the life of a cowboy for as long as he could remember. The vast, open desert was both his home and his workplace. He rode his horse through the unforgiving landscape every day, protecting the small settlements that were scattered across the land, and keeping watch for any signs of trouble. Life in the American West wasn't easy, but Sam had grown to love the quiet, wild beauty of it. The sun was high in the sky, the heat pressing down on the earth as Sam rode through the rocky terrain. His worn hat shielded his eyes from the bright light, and the sound of his horse's hooves pounding against the dry ground was the only thing that broke the silence. He was making his way to a remote settlement, where he was supposed to deliver a message about a cattle dispute. Sam had heard rumors of Apache warriors in the area, but he hadn't seen anything to make him feel worried. But today, something felt different. As Sam continued along the trail, he spotted a flash of movement in the distance. It was too far away for him to see clearly, but something about the sight made him uneasy. His instincts kicked in, and he immediately slowed his horse to a stop, scanning the horizon. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he knew something wasn't right. Sam had been in dangerous situations before, and he knew when to trust his gut. He adjusted his rifle in its holster and carefully dismounted, his boots making a soft thud as they hit the ground. The desert was hot and dry, the air shimmering in the heat. But Sam didn't mind. He was used to the conditions. He crouched low behind a rock, keeping out of sight, and continued to watch. After a few tense moments, Sam saw what he had been looking for. Two young girls, no older than 14, running frantically through the desert. They were barefoot, their clothes torn, and they seemed to be looking over their shoulders, fear etched on their faces. Sam's heart skipped a beat. He knew they were in trouble. The girls had clearly been running for a long time, and Sam could see that they were exhausted. They stumbled through the desert, their breath coming in quick gasps. They were alone, and the sight of them in such a dangerous place sent a shiver down Sam's spine. He wasn't sure what had led them out here, but he knew they were in danger. Then, Sam saw them. A group of soldiers on horseback, riding hard in pursuit of the girls. They were shouting, the sounds of their voices carried by the wind. The girls didn't stand a chance. They were outnumbered, and in the open desert, there was nowhere for them to hide. Sam's mind raced. He didn't have time to think. Without hesitation, he jumped onto his horse and spurred it forward, riding as fast as he could toward the girls. He didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew he couldn't let those soldiers catch them. The girls were running for their lives, and he couldn't let that happen. The sound of hooves grew louder as Sam closed the distance between himself and the girls. He had to make it in time. His horse's muscles burned with the effort, and Sam gripped the reins tightly. His eyes focused on the girls ahead. The soldiers were gaining on them fast, and Sam had only moments to act. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out his rifle, his fingers steady despite the adrenaline rushing through him. The first soldier was nearly upon the girls when Sam fired his shot, sending the man's horse rearing back. The soldier lost his balance and fell, scrambling to get back on his feet. Sam didn't wait for him to recover. He fired again, and the soldier was knocked off his horse, the shot ringing out across the desert. The girls heard the shots and looked up, fear still in their eyes. They didn't know who Sam was, but they saw him as their only hope. They kept running, their feet barely touching the ground, moving as fast as their tired bodies would let them. The soldiers, now more aware of Sam's presence, turned their attention to him. The leader of the group shouted orders, and more gunfire erupted. Sam ducked low, narrowly avoiding a bullet that whizzed past his ear. His horse swerved, its muscles straining as Sam pulled it to one side. He fired once more, hitting one of the soldiers in the leg, sending him crashing to the ground. The gunfight had become a desperate race. Sam was outnumbered, but his sharpshooting skills and quick thinking gave him the upper hand. He aimed carefully, firing at the soldiers one by one, until there was only one left. But as Sam took aim at the final soldier, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. He had been hit. The bullet tore through his flesh, and Sam felt the blood rush from the wound. He gritted his teeth, the pain blinding him for a moment. But he couldn't afford to stop. He pulled the trigger one last time, and the final soldier dropped from his horse, motionless. The fight was over, but Sam was hurt. He swayed in his saddle, his vision blurred from the blood loss. The girls, now safely out of immediate danger, stopped and turned back to look at him. They were scared, but they seemed to understand that he had saved their lives. Sam fought to stay conscious as he dismounted, his legs shaky beneath him. He had done what he could, but now he needed to get to safety. The girls, hesitant at first, slowly approached him. Sam's breathing was heavy, and his chest felt tight. The bullet wound was serious, and he could feel his strength fading. The girls helped him, guiding him toward a small cave nearby. It wasn't much, but it would be enough to keep him safe for now. Sam collapsed inside, leaning against the rock walls as the girls started to tend to his wound. He winced with pain, but he was grateful for their help. They were scared, but they were doing what they could. As Sam lay there, bleeding and weak, he couldn't help but think about what had just happened. He had risked his life for these two girls, and he didn't even know who they were. They had been running for their lives, and Sam had somehow ended up as their protector. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the desert. Sam closed his eyes for a moment, his mind drifting in and out of consciousness. The girls worked silently, doing their best to stop the bleeding. Sam didn't know how long he would last, but he was grateful to be alive. It was then that he realized something. He had come to this place to do a job, to deliver a message about a cattle dispute. But today, he had been given a purpose that was far greater than anything he could have imagined. He had saved 2 lives, and now, as he lay there, struggling to stay awake, he knew he would do whatever it took to make sure these girls got back home safely. Sam Blake awoke to the soft sound of rustling in the cave, a noise that pulled him out of the haze of pain and exhaustion. His eyes fluttered open slowly, and he found himself still lying against the cool, rough walls of the cave. For a moment, he couldn't remember how he had gotten here or what had happened after the gunfight. His head was fuzzy, and his shoulder throbbed with a dull, aching pain. The bullet wound from the earlier fight was bad, but it wasn't the worst he'd ever seen. What worried him more was the fact that he had no idea where he was or if the soldiers were still around, looking for him. As his senses came back to him, he became aware of the quiet presence of the 2 Apache girls. They were sitting nearby, talking softly to each other in a language Sam didn't understand. Their voices were gentle, almost soothing. As they moved around the small fire they had built just outside the cave, Sam could see the flicker of the flames casting shadows on the walls, their faces illuminated by the warm glow. The girls had stayed by his side through the night, and Sam realized just how lucky he had been. He didn't know what their story was or why they had been running from the soldiers, but he knew one thing for sure: if it hadn't been for them, he might not have made it out of the fight alive. He owed them his life. After a few minutes, one of the girls, the older one with dark, braided hair, looked up and noticed Sam had regained consciousness. Her face was a mix of concern and curiosity as she stood up and moved toward him. "Are you feeling better?" she asked, her voice soft and careful. Sam blinked at her, his eyes adjusting to the dim light of the cave. He wasn't sure if she was asking out of politeness or if she genuinely cared. Either way, he appreciated it. "Yeah, I'm all right," Sam replied, his voice hoarse. He could tell from the way his body felt that he was far from all right, but he didn't want to show weakness in front of the girls. They had already been through enough. The younger girl, who had remained silent up until now, walked over and handed him a small bowl of water. She didn't speak, but her wide, brown eyes watched him closely, as if studying him. Sam took the water gratefully, his parched throat burning with each sip. "Thank you," he muttered. And the girl nodded, her expression softening. For a moment, the 3 of them just sat in silence. Sam's mind raced with thoughts of what he needed to do next. He couldn't stay in the cave forever. The soldiers would likely come looking for him soon, and they would surely find the girls if they stuck around. But he also couldn't leave them to fend for themselves in the wilderness. The girls had saved his life, and now it was his turn to help them. Sam had no idea what kind of trouble they were in. But he knew the desert was no place for two young girls alone. They needed protection, and Sam was the only one who could offer it, at least for now. The older girl broke the silence. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice steady but filled with an underlying tension. Sam looked up at her, meeting her gaze. There was no fear in her eyes, only determination. She was strong, much stronger than he had first imagined. "Where will we go?" Sam asked. He didn't know the desert well enough to navigate it without help, but he wasn't about to let the girls wander aimlessly. The older girl hesitated, her brow furrowing slightly as she thought. Finally, she spoke. "We need to get to my tribe. They will help us." Sam nodded, but something about her words made him uneasy. He wasn't sure how her tribe would feel about him, especially after everything that had just happened. He wasn't Apache. And as far as he knew, the relationship between their people and the settlers wasn't exactly friendly. "Are you sure about that?" Sam asked, his voice cautious. "I don't know your people, but they might not trust me. I've got no way of explaining why I'm here." The older girl gave him a reassuring look. "They will trust me. We can explain what happened, and they will understand. You helped us. That's enough for now." Sam looked at her for a long moment. He didn't know if he believed her, but he wasn't about to turn back now. He'd come this far, and he wasn't going to leave the girls behind. Besides, he could hardly let them face whatever danger lay ahead without any help. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the three of them set out, Sam still feeling the effects of the bullet wound. His shoulder was wrapped tightly with some cloth the girls had found. But it was still painful. He knew it would only get worse before it got better. The girls, though small and slender, moved with a quiet grace, their footsteps sure and steady. Sam had to admire their resilience. They had been through something terrible, yet they didn't show it. They didn't complain, didn't ask for anything. They simply moved forward, determined to reach their goal. Sam kept a sharp eye out as they traveled, listening for any sign of danger. The desert was quiet, too quiet. He could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The girls didn't seem to notice, but Sam couldn't help it. His instincts told him that they were not alone. As they traveled deeper into the desert, the landscape began to change. The dry, barren earth gave way to rocky hills and sparse patches of scrubby plants. The air grew cooler, and the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint scent of something familiar. Sagebrush, perhaps, or something else from the desert. Sam breathed it in, grateful for the momentary relief from the oppressive heat. After several hours of walking, they reached a small, hidden valley, and Sam could tell they were nearing their destination. He didn't know what to expect, but he could feel the tension in the air as the girls moved with more purpose now. Sam followed closely behind, trying his best to stay strong despite the pain in his shoulder. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they arrived at a camp. It wasn't large, but it was clearly an Apache village. Several families were gathered around campfires, cooking, talking, and tending to their animals. Sam could see the wary looks from some of the people, but no one seemed to move aggressively toward him. The older girl, who Sam now knew was named Nayeli, led him to the center of the camp. Her younger sister, a pony, walked quietly beside her. The people in the camp stopped what they were doing, their eyes shifting between Sam and the girls. The air was thick with tension, but Nayeli stood tall, her head held high, showing no fear. A man, tall and strong, stepped forward. His face was stern, but there was something about the way he looked at Sam that made him feel uneasy. Nayeli spoke to him in Apache, and the man nodded before turning to Sam. He didn't speak English, but it was clear from his expression that he was assessing Sam. Nayeli's voice was steady as she explained what had happened, telling the man everything, the soldiers, the gunfight, and how Sam had risked his life to save them. Sam watched the man closely, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea how the tribe would react, but he had done his part. Now it was up to them to decide if he was friend or foe. The man looked at Sam for a long moment before he spoke. His voice was rough, but not unfriendly. "You are a brave man," he said, his words slow and deliberate. "You have earned our respect." Sam didn't know if that meant he was accepted, but for now, it was a start. The night stretched on, the stars twinkling brightly above the desert as Sam found a place to sit. His body exhausted but his mind alert. This was only the beginning of a much longer journey. He had saved the girls, but the hard part was far from over. Tomorrow, he would have to face whatever came next, but for tonight, at least, he could rest. The desert had tested him, and it would test him again. But Sam was ready. The morning light crept through the cracks in the rocky cliffs, casting a soft glow across the Apache camp. Sam woke slowly, his body aching from the long journey and the wound on his shoulder. The pain was still there, but it had dulled somewhat, leaving him feeling a little more alert. He had slept fitfully through the night, trying to ignore the discomfort. But now, with the first light of day, the quiet of the desert, and the rhythmic sounds of the camp gave him a sense of calm. He slowly sat up, careful not to disturb the makeshift bandage on his shoulder. The camp was already alive with activity. Some of the Apache women were preparing food, while the men were talking around their fires, discussing the day's plans. The children played nearby, their laughter ringing through the air. It felt like a peaceful morning, but Sam couldn't shake the feeling that everything still hung in the balance. Nayeli and Apache were already up, standing near their father. Sam had learned the night before that their father was the brother of the Apache chief, which meant that Nayeli and Apache were well-respected members of the tribe. Their father, though stern, seemed to hold a quiet authority, and Sam could sense that the respect for him was deep among the people of the camp. Nayeli caught Sam's eye as he stood and began to move toward the center of the camp. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a faint trace of gratitude in her eyes. Apache stood beside her, looking around curiously, but her eyes often lingered on Sam as though she was trying to figure him out. Sam couldn't help but notice how much they had grown in the short time they had been together. Despite everything they had been through, they carried themselves with a sense of purpose and strength. Sam slowly approached them, his mind still running through the events of the past day. He had helped them escape from the soldiers, but now they were here in their home, and he wasn't sure what to expect. He knew the Apache tribe had its own ways, its own rules, and he didn't want to overstep. He wasn't sure if they saw him as a hero or an outsider, a man who had done something brave, but still someone they couldn't fully trust. Nayeli turned to him as he reached them. Her father was standing nearby, his eyes fixed on the campfire, but he was listening closely. "Sam," Nayeli began, her voice steady but quiet. "You've done more for us than we could ever repay. But now, things serve its side and sedent too. And we have in the mar for you sedent to that are sedent to that are sedent to that are sedent. One way for us is rive sedent to that. You must understand something." Her eyes were serious, and Sam could tell that whatever she was about to say was important. Sam nodded, waiting for her to continue. He had a feeling that whatever was coming next would be a turning point. He had saved her and her sister's lives, but that didn't mean everything was settled. He wasn't Apache, and though they had accepted him for the moment, he knew that acceptance in their world was something that couldn't be taken for granted. "You have saved our lives," Nayeli said again, her words clear and direct. "But my people have always lived with the fear of outsiders. There is much distrust between our people and the settlers. The chief will want to know what you plan to do next." Sam took a deep breath, knowing the moment of truth had arrived. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure what they expected from him or what their chief wanted. All he knew was that he had come to the desert to do a job. But now, it seemed like his path had taken a new direction altogether. "I'm not here to cause any trouble," Sam replied slowly, his voice low. I didn't come here to fight your people or anyone else. I came to help. That's all. And if that means earning your trust, I'll do whatever I can. Nayeli's gaze softened, but she didn't immediately respond. Instead, she turned her head toward her father, who had been listening intently to their conversation. He hadn't moved, but his sharp eyes were focused on Sam. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, as if the air itself held its breath. Finally, Nayeli's father spoke, his voice deep and commanding. You've earned something by saving my daughters, he said. But you have to understand, the Apache do not easily trust outsiders, and the chief will not make his decision lightly. Sam nodded, trying to hide the knot that had formed in his stomach. He had been bracing himself for something like this. He knew the Apache had every reason to be wary of him. He was a stranger, and his presence could easily be seen as a threat, especially in these uncertain times. I understand, Sam said. I don't expect anyone to trust me right away, but I'll stay out of your way and respect your people's ways. I just want to help, and if there's anything I can do to prove that, I'll do it. The older man, Nayeli's father, studied him for a long time, his eyes never leaving Sam's face. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke again. We will see. The chief must decide. But for now, you are welcome in our camp. You have saved my daughters. That is enough for me. Sam felt a wave of relief wash over him. But he knew this was only the beginning. The chief was still the one who held ultimate power in the tribe, and if he didn't approve, everything could change in an instant. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparations. Sam tried to stay out of the way as the tribe began its morning rituals. There was food to be prepared, horses to be tended, and tasks to be done. He could see how closely everyone worked together, each person playing a role in the daily life of the camp. He felt out of place among them, but at the same time, he couldn't help but admire the way they functioned as a community. There was a strength in their unity, a quiet confidence in the way they lived. Nayeli and Apache stayed close to Sam as the morning went on, their presence a reminder of what had brought him here. He couldn't help but think about how much he still had to learn about their people, their customs, and their way of life. He had saved them, but they were more than just victims of a dangerous situation. They were part of a larger, deeply rooted culture, and he had to tread carefully if he was going to understand them, and if he hoped to remain in their camp. By midday, the chief finally made his decision. Sam had been sitting near the fire, trying to relax, when a figure approached him. It was a tall man, his face marked with the wisdom of age. He was wearing a feathered headdress, the symbol of his leadership, and as he came closer, everyone fell silent. The chief, a man who was both feared and respected, had arrived. Nayeli stood up beside Sam, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. The chief's gaze swept over the camp before settling on Sam. The air seemed to hold its breath. As the two men locked eyes, Sam stood, his posture respectful but firm, knowing this moment was one that would determine everything. The chief spoke first, his voice carrying authority. You have saved my daughters, but you must know that the Apache have their ways. We do not forget the past, nor do we trust easily. But you have shown courage and honor in your actions. That is something we respect. Sam could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. I only did what anyone would do. I didn't expect any reward, but if you accept me here, I'll do my best to respect your people and your ways. The chief considered this for a moment before nodding slowly. You will stay with us for now, Sam Blake. But remember, you are among the Apache. You are a guest, and you must prove yourself worthy of that hospitality. With those words, the chief turned and walked away, leaving Sam with a sense of relief, but also a renewed understanding of the challenge that lay ahead. He had been accepted for now, but it was clear that his journey was far from over. The chief had given him a chance, but how he would prove himself was still to be determined. As the sun began to set, Sam felt the weight of the moment settle on him. He wasn't just a cowboy anymore. He had stepped into a new world, and now it was up to him to learn and adapt to it, to show the Apache that he could be trusted. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since he had ridden into the desert, Sam felt a glimmer of hope. Tomorrow would be another day, another challenge, but for now, he was at least where he needed to be. The days that followed felt like a mix of peace and tension for Sam. On one hand, he was glad to be alive and grateful for the opportunity to prove himself to the Apache people. On the other hand, he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The chief had given him a chance, but that was just the beginning. Sam had to show, every day, that he was worthy of their trust. Sam spent most of his time working with the people in the camp. He helped gather firewood, tended to the horses, and even assisted with some of the hunting. The Apache had their own way of living, and Sam was learning every day. Their skills in the desert were unmatched. They could track animals through the toughest terrain. They knew the land like the back of their hands, and they could survive in ways Sam had never imagined. Every moment with them was a learning experience, and Sam did his best to take it all in. The girls, Nayeli and Apache, remained by his side, often guiding him through their world. Nayeli, with her quiet wisdom, helped Sam understand the Apache's ways of life, their traditions, their values, and their deep respect for the land. Apache, younger but just as fierce in her own way, was always curious about Sam. She'd ask him about the outside world, the places he'd been, and the people he'd met. Sam found himself telling her stories about the distant lands and bustling cities, and in return, Apache would share stories of their people, stories of bravery, of survival, and of the ancestors who had fought for the Apache way of life. Over time, the bond between Sam and the two girls grew. They became more than just people he had saved. They became his friends, his family. Though they were from different worlds, Sam found common ground with them. They had all known loss, and they all understood what it meant to fight for survival. Sam had never thought much about the Apache before, but now, as he spent more time with them, he began to realize how much they valued loyalty, courage, and family values that he had always held dear as well. But as much as Sam wanted to fit in, he couldn't forget that he was still an outsider. The chief had accepted him for now, but that didn't mean he was safe. The chief had made it clear that Sam's place in the camp depended on how well he could prove himself. Sam didn't mind the work, it kept him busy and gave him purpose, but he couldn't help feeling like he was constantly walking on thin ice. Every day, he wondered if he had done enough to earn their trust, or if they were simply waiting for him to make a mistake. One evening, as the camp sat around the fire, the chief called for a meeting. Sam had been expecting it. He had noticed that the Apache always gathered at night to discuss important matters. The firelight flickered in the center of the camp, and everyone gathered around in a circle. The air was cool, and the sounds of the desert night were distant, creating a quiet sense of anticipation. Nayeli and Apache sat beside Sam, their faces serious. Sam knew this wasn't just another casual gathering, it was something bigger. The chief, as always, stood tall in the center, his expression unreadable. Sam had grown used to the man's stoic demeanor, but tonight, there was something different in the way he held himself. The air felt heavier, more charged. "We have a visitor," the chief said, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. Sam's heart skipped a beat. Visitors meant trouble. Visitors meant that something important was about to happen, and it rarely boded well for those on the outside. A man stepped forward from the shadows. He was tall, his face weathered by years in the desert. His clothes were not Apache, but his presence was enough to make Sam's blood run cold. He had the look of a soldier, though his clothes were worn and faded. Sam knew the kind of trouble men like this brought. The stranger spoke, his voice low and gruff. "I'm looking for someone, a man by the name of Sam Blake." Sam felt the eyes of the entire camp turn toward him. The firelight flickered, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Sam stood up slowly, his heart pounding. The stranger's gaze locked onto him, and he didn't have to say more for Sam to know what was coming. This man was here because of the fight, the soldiers Sam had faced to protect the girls. Sam had known this day would come, but he hadn't expected it to arrive so soon. Sam stepped forward, his body tense, ready for whatever might come. The chief's eyes never left the stranger as he spoke. "Why do you seek this man?" the chief asked, his tone calm but firm. There was no fear in his voice, just an air of authority that made the stranger pause. "I'm a soldier from the fort nearby," the man said, his eyes flicking from the chief to Sam. "We've been sent to find the cowboy who interfered with our patrol. He killed my men, and we're here to bring him to justice." Sam felt a cold chill run down his spine. He knew this was coming, but hearing it said out loud made it feel real. The soldiers had come looking for him, and there was no way they would leave without a fight. The chief stood still, his expression unchanging. The camp was silent, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Sam looked around at the faces in the crowd. He could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the worry that this could turn into something bigger than they were ready for. But there was also something else, a sense of solidarity, of strength. These people had faced much worse than a handful of soldiers, and Sam realized, in that moment, that they would stand by him. The chief spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of a leader who had seen much in his life. "The Apache do not take kindly to threats," he said. "This man saved my daughters. He fought to protect our people. And for that, he has earned our respect. If you wish to take him, you will have to go through me." Sam could feel his heart beating faster now. The tension in the air was thick, but the chief's words gave him strength. This was the moment. He had made his choice when he decided to protect the girls, and now he had to stand by it. No matter what happened next, he couldn't back down. The soldier looked at the chief, then at Sam, his jaw tightening. He didn't speak again, but it was clear he wasn't ready to leave. A confrontation seemed inevitable. Sam had no weapon at his side. He had left his rifle back at the campfire, but he knew he couldn't just stand there and do nothing. He had to rely on the trust that the Apache had placed in him. They had accepted him, and now it was time to prove that they had made the right choice. The chief's voice broke the silence once more. "Leave now. Return to your fort. If you come back, it will not go well for you." The soldier hesitated, his gaze flickering between Sam and the chief. For a long moment, it seemed like he might try to argue. But then, slowly, he nodded. Without another word, he turned and walked away into the night. Sam let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The chief's words had been clear, and the soldier had backed down. The camp was still, everyone watching the stranger leave. But Sam knew that this wasn't the end. The Apache had made their stand for him, and for the first time, he truly felt like he belonged. Nayeli and Apache stood by him, their faces showing a mixture of relief and pride. Sam felt something stir inside him, a warmth that spread through his chest. He wasn't just a cowboy anymore. He had earned his place here, among these people, who had shown him kindness and trust. The chief, though quiet, finally spoke once more. "You have earned our respect, Sam Blake. But this is only the beginning. You are not done proving yourself." Sam nodded, understanding the weight of the chief's words. The battle was far from over. But in that moment, with the Apache standing by his side, Sam felt stronger than he ever had before. He had a new purpose, a new family, and no matter what the future held, he knew he wasn't alone. The path ahead was uncertain, but Sam was ready to face whatever came next. With the threat of the soldiers gone for now, the night returned to its peaceful rhythm. The campfire crackled as the Apache people began to talk again, the tension lifting like a weight from their shoulders. Sam sat by the fire, surrounded by the warmth of those who had come to accept him, knowing that his journey was far from over, but that he had found something worth fighting for.